Trusting your own ears used to be a biological survival instinct. When you heard the voice of your boss, your spouse, or your child, your brain instantly verified their identity. But human biology hasn't updated its security protocols. And a synthetic voice doesn't need to breathe. Michael was a junior finance director at a rapidly expanding global logistics firm. He spent his days staring at stark, high-contrast accounting dashboards, moving millions of dollars in freight contracts across international borders. He knew the company was quietly negotiating a massive, hostile buyout of a rival shipping fleet. The deal was completely classified. At 4:45 p.m. on a Friday, his secure internal phone line rang. He missed the call by exactly 2 seconds. A voicemail notification popped up on his monitor. It was from the chief executive officer. Michael put on his headphones and listened as the CEO urgently approved a $12 million offshore wire transfer. He sounded exhausted, stressed, and completely adamant that the money had to move before the banks closed in 15 minutes. The logistics company had scaled way too fast. They had billion-dollar revenue streams, but a fundamentally broken, outdated corporate structure. There were no secondary authorization protocols for the executive suite. The CEO was notoriously aggressive, prone to screaming matches, and completely intolerant of delays. He operated like a dictator. If you questioned his orders, you were fired. Michael was desperate to secure his end-of-year bonus and prove his loyalty to the board. He didn't have the authority to push back against a direct vocal command from the absolute top of the corporate ladder. He listened to the voicemail a second time. The CEO referenced the exact name of the highly classified buyout target. He used the specific internal financial jargon only the executive suite knew. The tone, the gravelly pitch, the slight Texas drawl, it was mathematically perfect. Michael completely trusted the audio. But the CEO wasn't standing in an airport lounge making a frantic phone call. He was sitting in a silent boardroom with his phone turned off. The voicemail was a weaponized digital payload. A massive, highly organized phishing syndicate in Eastern Europe had been profiling the logistics company for 6 months. They didn't try to hack the company's heavily encrypted firewalls. They hacked the CEO's public digital footprint. The syndicate scraped 40 hours of the CEO speaking on various supply chain podcasts, keynote speeches, and quarterly earnings calls. They fed that raw audio into a highly advanced neural network. The machine stripped away the background noise and learned the exact biometric cadence of his vocal cords. Then, the hackers breached a mid-level manager's email to steal the classified details of the shipping buyout. They typed a 90-second script into a text box. The generative AI synthesized the CEO's voice with terrifying precision, artificially adding synthetic stress and breathy urgency. They spoofed the internal caller ID, routed the signal directly to Michael's desk, and dropped the bomb. Michael felt the adrenaline spike in his chest. He had exactly 8 minutes before the federal banking window closed for the weekend. He opened the master wire transfer portal. He manually typed in the 14-digit offshore routing number provided in the voicemail. He checked the digital authorization boxes. He triggered the $12 million release. The funds drained from the company's operating account and entered the digital clearinghouse. Michael sat back in his leather chair, exhaling a massive sigh of relief. He had just saved the biggest corporate buyout in the company's history. He picked up his cell phone and texted the CEO's private number just to confirm the wire was locked and the money was moving. 5 agonizing minutes passed. Then the CEO texted back, "What wire? I'm in a board meeting." Michael's stomach dropped violently. He grabbed his laptop and ran down 2 flights of concrete stairs, bypassing the corporate elevators entirely. He burst into the cybersecurity department, It was a raw, functional space-exposed concrete floors, humming server racks and stark, glaring monitors casting shadows across the room. Charles, the senior network analyst, was packing up his bag to go home. Michael slammed the laptop on the metal desk, logged in, and played the voicemail. He begged Charles to hit the master kill switch on the company's outgoing banking gateway. Charles froze. Activating the kill switch would instantly paralyze the company's entire global fleet. Ships wouldn't be able to pay for international fuel. Trucks would be stranded at border crossings. If Charles froze the network and the voicemail turned out to be real, the CEO would financially ruin him. He would be blacklisted from the tech industry forever. Charles sat in the cold, humming server room for 2 full minutes. He stared at his master override key, weighing his mortgage and his career against the panicked finance director standing in front of him. Then he chose the hard path. He didn't hit the kill switch. Instead, he pulled the voicemail file directly into a forensic digital waveform visualizer. Charles stared at the high-contrast monitor. He wasn't listening to the spoken words. He was looking at the jagged green spikes of the audio file stretching across the black screen. Human speech is chaotic and messy. When a human being speaks frantically for 90 seconds straight, their lungs have to intake oxygen. Even the smallest, sharpest inhale creates a microscopic, unavoidable bump on an audio waveform. Charles dragged his mouse across the digital timeline, isolating the fractions of a second between the CEO's aggressive sentences. He zoomed in on the silent gaps. The line between the words was completely, terrifyingly flat. It was an absolute mathematical zero. There was no background room tone. There was no friction from lips parting. And there was absolutely no human breath. The green line just stopped, and then instantly started again. Charles looked up at Michael, the stark light of the monitor reflecting in his eyes. "He never inhaled," Charles said. "This isn't a human being." Charles slammed his hand down on the master kill switch, hard-locking the corporate network. The $12 million wire was caught in the Federal Clearinghouse with exactly 14 seconds to spare. They didn't call the local police. They bypassed local authorities entirely and called the FBI's cybercrime division. Federal agents didn't bother looking at the bank accounts. They traced the internal IP address back through a complex maze of virtual private networks. They traced the neural network's digital fingerprint to a fortified server farm inside a raw concrete warehouse in Eastern Europe. The syndicate wasn't just targeting the logistics company. They had weaponized the cloned voices of over 400 global executives, quietly draining millions of dollars from mid-level corporate employees. The raid was executed by a coordinated international task force. The syndicate leaders were sitting in a stark, unheated warehouse, watching millions of dollars flow across their terminal screens. They never heard the tactical team breach the reinforced steel doors. Armed operators flooded the raw, functional space, throwing flashbangs into the center of the server aisles. The lead hacker tried to smash his master hard drive with a heavy steel hammer. A tactical operator slammed him into the concrete wall, zip-tying his wrists before the hammer even hit the floor. The massive, invisible deepfake empire was physically dismantled in less than 3 minutes. The syndicate operators were extradited and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for mass international wire fraud and cyber extortion. The logistics company recovered their $12 million, but the internal damage was permanent. The CEO realized his aggressive dictatorial management style was exactly what made the company so vulnerable to a social engineering attack in the first place. But the heaviest psychological toll fell on Michael. He kept his job, but the trauma fundamentally rewired his brain. He can no longer trust a phone call from anyone. If his own mother calls him, He demands that she text him a highly specific, prearranged code word before he will answer the phone. At work, he refuses to process a single financial transaction based on vocal authority. He prints every single wire request and physically forces the executives to sign the paper while he watches them breathe. A human voice used to be the ultimate proof of reality. Now it is just a string of downloadable code. When an algorithm can perfectly mimic the biometric cadence of your loved ones or your boss, your ears become your biggest vulnerability. A security protocol is completely useless if you implicitly trust the audio. How many fake voices have you listened to this week without even realizing it? Send this video to anyone who works in finance, management, or corporate administration. Tell them to stop blindly trusting urgent voicemails. The lack of a single human breath might be the only thing standing between them and total financial ruin.